All right, so the video's on and the mics are on now.
Okay, so we'll call to order the Tuesday, January 20th meeting of the Milton Budget Coordination Committee. I think we have a fairly light agenda today. We're just continuing to follow on the FY27 budget development process and continuing to discuss how we're trying to close some of our gap on the town end and in collaboration with Milton Public Schools. So I will start with a report from Town Administrator Milano on that front.
Sure, thanks. So Amy and I met with John and Katie last week, talked through some things we saw as potential pathways to work through the budget, including some changes on health insurance, and we talked at length about the school department reserves and what their policy goal is and how we can look at that potentially a little bit differently to help facilitate the operating budget for fiscal 27. We did share one update that working with our financial advisor, we are going to pair up our fire station debt with the Cunningham Collycott debt, and based on that game plan, we're shifting our expected debt service impact for Cunningham Collycott project to fiscal 28 to align with the amortization plan for the fire station debt. So that reduces our anticipated costs in fiscal 27. Overall, it's a couple $100,000 in savings. However, it's not a savings forever. It's a shift from 27 to 28. And just a little bit more background on that is the Cunningham Collycott and fire station will have a longer amortization period, so we're going to issue those kind of together. And then all of our other debt we're going to issue on a shorter payback period to take advantage of lower rates for shorter time periods. Potentially is up to 0.5% or greater savings between the two. The other, so I think, yeah, it was the principal and interest, talking about health insurance, and just to give a little bit more clarity to that, that's there are health insurance costs budgeted in the shared general fund for folks whose salaries are paid by revolving funds or other funds within the school budget, and on the town side, we did find one on the town side. Conversation about reserves and how we can facilitate or maybe able to facilitate contributions to school department reserves. And then the last piece that I think where we've left it is on the revenue outlook that will make some revisions once we have the state aid numbers are out. I think the latest I saw is that the governor's budget is expected to come out next Wednesday, 28th. Sometimes the state aid figures come out a little bit beforehand, but at the latest we would expect an update the 28th on the governor's budget for state aid forecasts. I think that's kind of where things stand at the moment on 27 in terms of the work we're doing. I know the schools have met, they have a finance committee meeting tomorrow morning, a regular school committee meeting tomorrow morning. And we met with the select board finance committee on Friday morning and have remained in touch from there.
More about the discussions on how you address the school department reserves.
Sure. So just as we are in terms of contributing free cash to the town's reserves, whether it's general stabilization fund or others, the school department budget does include using less circuit breaker than possibly allowed in order to keep increasing the circuit breaker balance. So one possible solution there would be to say, don't lean on circuit breaker to build up a reserve. There are other ways that the town can contribute to school department reserves, just as we would on the town side. So that's something we've raised as an issue, as a potential option, so that we're not building reserves on the back of the operating budget, but doing it with other funds if other funds are available to do so.
So I had an idea about how we might use free cash in a way that might help the operating budget stabilization fund. I've said, I'm on the record as saying, simply putting free cash into the operating budget stabilization fund doesn't magically create a source of recurring revenue. But if we, and this gets to the point that Nathan raised in his email, if we have projected that the next override might be necessary in 4 years, if we took $1 million in free cash and put it in the operating budget stabilization fund and then amortized it over that 4-year period, then we would say that instead of $700,000 in recurring revenue, we have $950,000 in revenue each year over that 4-year period. So that seems to me to be both a more fiscally responsible way to treat free cash that's put into the operating budget stabilization fund, and at the same time, treating it a little bit more for a finite period as a recurring source of revenue.
I think one of the things, I don't know, did I say at the finance committee meeting, was some of those decisions, if we can kind of reach consensus as to the earliest we'd wanna, what year are we trying to work towards, and then kind of work back from there. Like, is it 2031? Is it 2030? Is it 2032? And then to your point, I think that is how we can approach it. And I would agree in terms of whether it's the 4 years past this year, but I think that will help make some of those decisions easier. And where things stand, we have probably $1.5 million in free cash right now that isn't really allocated yet, to give you a sense of what that top end figure could be.
Including capital or?
Including capital.
Okay.
And I can share a breakdown. I have a breakdown of it that I'll distribute to this group. I should have sent that around as to what we've kind of earmarked in a first pass at free cash usage.
Yeah. Just to catch everybody up, before we went live, Brian asked about whether there was information on school department actuals on a historical basis. Nick said he's got historical information going back 5 years. He's going to put that in our committee folder, so that should be available later today.
Thank you. And Nick, is that inclusive of schools in town, or do you want to do the same?
No, we didn't produce schools.
Okay, so you need 5 years of history from schools.
Yeah, I think in the school, I think it's in there, but it's just at the,
Total?
there might be a attempted breakdown between salary and wages versus general, but that's,
By cost center?
no,
Okay.
very top level.
Hello?
So I would only want to go in the discussion about the stabilization account for operating. Obviously, I'm assuming it was meant to be a lever to be used during the override, post-override time until the next override, when the needs were heavier, when the needs were low, could be used above 750 or below 750. But I would say that adding free cash to that would be a great idea. I know it's a dotted line to operating from free cash. It's not a direct line, but it's if we continue to be relatively conservative, and I think how we've been budgeting, that free cash may be something that could be somewhat reoccurring. And when you use it for one-time things first, like capital and the other things, and there is a balance, to continue to populate that stabilization account over time would always be a great spot for money to land in order to have that lever be heavier or needed at the discretion of the town at each fiscal year. So obviously, I think this year would be one year that it's very much needed. So I appreciate the thought of looking at it a little differently, whether it's a fixed amount of time with a fixed amount of money, or adding to it in order to use the judgment in any one given year to have that lever be pulled more or less in order to support whatever the operating budget is or whatever the needs are of the town. That's something that I think a lot of the, I've been in front of the 3 public audiences since the last time we met, And that's something that people are interested in talking about. They want to know how that works and could that work differently? Could there be more flexibility in that? And I encourage that.
I think Winston has his hand raised.
It's actually me. I think Jay had something he wanted to share, so I just wanted to have him get recognized. I think he's assuming he's mobile.
Yeah, sorry, I'm driving, so I can't meet all rules of etiquette. Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to say I strongly encourage what Mr. Walker suggested. In fact, it's pretty much word for word something I sent to Mr. Milano last night. So we are on the same wavelength. I guess, but one hesitation or one complication, I think, is I like the way you're thinking. We can put in $1 million and then pull out an additional $250,000 over the next 4 years. The question is, though, we'll have to define pull out an additional $250,000 in addition to what? Because what our previous plans for how to use this account were sort of fuzzy. So if we are saying take a fuzzy amount and like for this year, maybe we know what it is. For next year, the year after, take a fuzzy amount and add $250,000 to it. I think that'll need some firming up there. But I like I was going to start the same place you started, so I'm glad to hear I'm not totally crazy. I'll put myself on mute now.
I think Maggie's got her hand raised.
Oh, hi. So I'm wondering, Nick, if you've reached out to the other departments, town departments, to see what their needs are. I know the planning department has needs that have gone unfunded. I know that we need to have all the bylaws codified. We've gotten a little bit there, but we haven't finished it. And it's not just the planning department. The recodification would help the building department. And if you've listened to our new building inspector, he says it's very complicated the way our bylaws are all set up. And I understand this committee is trying to make things easier for the next group of people, but we should be doing that with all of our departments as well. Our building department is very, very busy, and for them wasting time, going back and forth through different versions of our bylaws is very time consuming and cumbersome. And so I'm wondering if you've reached out to the other departments. I think the police department, they want an IT person. So before we're allocating to just the schools, have we reached out to the other departments to see what their needs are?
So yes, all the departmental requests came in with those requests. And in terms of the recodification request, we do have a request for an appropriation for that. It's on our radar. We're aware of it. We're looking at ways to try to get that funded. I think what is important about the distinction here, I think the conversation started with a conversation about appropriating funds to school department reserves. Appropriating funding to the operating budget stabilization fund supports the entire operating budget. It's not particular to any one department. So I just want to make sure we draw that distinction. The operating budget stabilization fund supports the whole budget across the board. While there are places where we talked about potentially facilitating building reserves, that would be kind of a separate conversation. But we're aware of the asks. We've looked at it, and we're trying to come up with a game plan, particularly on the recodification piece, and trying to work with KP on that. So.
Okay, and then just another thought, and maybe this is just my business hat that I wear whenever I need an infusion of cash. I always think about sales. Where can I generate more revenue? So I'm thinking about what's the school department's philosophy on generating more revenue? I believe they should be looking internally at their policies to generate more revenue and not necessarily looking at the town side to foot the bill, so to speak. So, for instance, when my kids were at Milton High, well, I was willing to pay more for the sports fees. And so, in my opinion, I thought I'd rather pay a one-time fund, a one-time user fee than be going on my taxes in perpetuity. So I would rather pay more as a parent for my kid to, do whatever sport that they were doing. So I'm also wondering, like when my son was in kindergarten, my daughter was in kindergarten, she only went half day. That's all that was offered. 2 years later, my son entered kindergarten, and I had to pay for full day K. And at that time, it was, I believe, $3,500, and I gladly paid the $3,500 because it was cheaper than me paying for daycare. So when the town decided to charge for full day K, I didn't necessarily support that because there's so many parents in town who are willing to pay that fee. And if you recall, if you had a financial burden and you could not meet that $3,500, it was a sliding scale based on your income. So there was, whoever created the program did a great job because they allowed for parents to still participate even though they it was a financial burden. So I believe that there are things like that should be reviewed by the school department to save some money, but to bring in money. They need to start bringing in some money to offset some of their newer offerings. Thanks.
So Maggie, I'll answer that question. Thank you for the feedback. Last Wednesday, both Katie and I presented to the school committee a structure for approaching this $2.1 million deficit. It started with increasing fees for clubs, for sports, for transportation, and facility rentals. So we've already done that. We're anticipating a hopeful fee increase that could result in a net $100,000 to the school department. We also reviewed with a little bit more of a fine-tooth comb our non-salary lines in our budget. We've identified up to about $200,000 there. Again, trying to reduce the impact on our FTEs. I just want to go on record as saying that I think that the way fees are set up, to your point, they usually go up and down a little bit over the course of time, depending on what the budgets look like, and trying to make sure that things are accessible. So we promise parents that they will be able to take part in any of those activities. We do have a sliding scale that we continue to use. The rentals will be a little different. Town rentals may go up, but private rentals will go up probably a little higher. And the hard part is that schools have a limited ability to raise their own money. We are a teaching and learning institution. We're not a fundraising organization. So when we look to raise money, we do so in ways that are targeted that we have available to us, but we just have a limited amount of strategies for that. But we are actively seeking to do so in the areas that we have available to us.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad you're looking into that. Thank you. I have a list of other things too, but thanks.
We have a finance meeting tomorrow at 8 a.m. If you want to attend remotely, you should
Okay.
log on.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question about schools? Just when I was looking at the detail, I want to suck up the whole time of the meeting on this. On the F27 to F26 proposed budget in the 26 budget updates, who can I ask for on what the detail is behind some of the
Are you looking at
increases?
the FY26 first quarter report?
No, I'm looking at level service budget, F27.
That's
Preliminary.
the budget sheet that you shared, I think,
Is that
October or so.
that's the quarter one report, correct?
No, that is just the high level service for FY '27.
Yes.
And that is summarized at the cost center level, which is similar to the quarterly reports. And then it also has a breakdown by object code, DESI object code, which is salaries and general expenses.
Okay. Is that on the budget website, this detail?
So the detail hasn't been presented yet.
Oh, okay.
The first quarter report is on the website and the second quarter report will go up tomorrow or
Right.
Thursday.
Well, I guess the question is, this is a 5.2% increase. And some of the numbers look like right in line, like Colacott salaries are 1.57. You know, they don't seem that high, but then there's some numbers that seem like high. And I was just wondering, maybe I can send you a separate email, if that's all right. Just ask what's in it.
So, Katie, is the detail available?
The detail hasn't been presented yet. So we presented it at the cost center level to the school committee.
Which would be what we would normally do at the quarterly reports.
I think that they're talking about, so the budget for next year.
Oh.
And I think they're looking for every single line, which we're still in the process of
I see.
creating the budget for next year. And so that documentation hasn't been provided to the school committee yet.
Correct.
But it would
Would you
be,
have it? I'm sorry.
but it would be available for fiscal, for the previous year, whatever the previous year is that it's compared to.
Yes, and that's already posted on the website.
Yeah, and sorry, this is Jay butting in again. We should figure out how questions go from, Brian is a warrant committee member, how questions go from warrant committee members to the schools, whether it goes via the school committee members, whether it goes via our subcommittee, warrant committee, subcommittee on schools. So I appreciate that you don't want 15 questions coming from 15 different warrant committee members. I appreciate that. We'll try to work with you on that.
Well, Jay, what I would say is, I think the committee members here are entitled to ask questions and get answers, and warrant committee members are entitled to ask questions and get answers. The best thing would be if we have a repository where that information is accessible to everyone. So we should probably work on that. But I tried to go through the process of a average taxpayer trying to answer some of these questions by using school's website and the town website, and I didn't get very far. So I'm going to make sure that taxpayers who are trying to answer these questions for themselves have accessible information. I think that's something that we need to work on.
So I would also say at the beginning of this team meeting back in September or October, I think we had a conversation outside that the warrant committee was going to have two dedicated folks to come to our finance meetings and be liaisons.
Yeah.
And this process, what we're trying to make sure that we're aware of is that we would either have one repository to have information in, but we would prefer that questions come in a channeled environment where we know exactly, we don't want to answer the same question 9 times
Right,
from 9 different
exactly.
people. And we have an active FY '27-26 webpage. It's been up since October. Every single meeting we have has been recorded. We've been meeting weekly. Every agenda item is there. All the materials are there. We want to make sure folks go on that to look at the meetings, review the meetings, look at any materials presented. Going back to closing out 25, first quarter for 26, and all the meetings in between.
Can I also, I want to ask a question too. I mean, is it is it like the time in the budget development process where seeing the budget detail for MPS tells you anything? Like, I'm not familiar with how the schools, like the methodology for budget development that you're using, like, are you building from like the ground up, or are you just like giving, you know, pots of money, so to speak? Like, I don't know if I'm articulating this well, but
Zero-based
like, is
budget.
it gonna tell, yeah, like if you're not doing zero-based budgeting, like what is the budget detail like really going to tell us right now anyway?
So the budget detail that we provided last year shows
Yeah.
every single line. There's
Yeah.
over 400 lines, so it shows every single line, shows the number, it shows the actual from the previous year, the number of FTEs, the original budget, updated budget, and then what we're projecting for
Right.
the next year, and it shows it for every single line. And that's essentially the process that we use to build the level service budget, so it has all that information.
Yeah.
What we've done in an effort to kind of streamline the process and just be able to report the initial level service budget to the school committee is we rolled that up into cost center detail. That is the recommendation
Yeah.
by I believe it's MASS, the association, for school superintendents and school committees to be able to report the information out, because the line level detail is just very granular.
Yeah.
And so that's what we do for the quarterly report, and that was our initial level service budget presentation, was just kind of add a little bit of a higher level roll up.
Yeah.
But we have all of the detail underneath it. It's just that it hasn't been publicly presented yet. It is a huge part of the process because we look at every single line, every single person, utilities, everything at a very granular detail. It's just that information hasn't been presented yet. We are still very much in the process of creating the budget.
Yeah.
So until we know what the budget number is that we're trying to target, then
It's hard to
we're
get
still
to
trying
that.
to dig
Yeah.
into what the impact is going to be for the individual lines.
Yeah. I just, that's what I was kind of assuming, but I don't know, I just thought I'd ask like the question in a different way, so we all kind of got it.
Yeah, knowing what our revenue number was going to be gives us then to back ourselves into all those other line items that we need to do. So having
Yeah.
a number,
So FY '26 will tell us something, but the detail for '27 isn't done yet, so it wouldn't tell us anything.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but, so this gets us to, the question of schedule, what's the
Yep.
schedule?
Right.
And as a former warrant committee member and former school committee member, I would say that the budget books, if they're the old budget books with all the detail down to by school, by cost center, by line item, that information is incredibly helpful if you're trying to analyze and make policy decisions about the school budget. That being said, I think superintendent at the last schools finance subcommittee said that probably that information would be available sometime just before the February break. Is that right?
my statement at that meeting was that we would provide what the reductions would be by February break.
Right.
And I agree, I think that the budget books are a valuable tool. They're now online. Usually, I guess one of the things that I'm struggling with is that would be a January, February, get it in front of everybody by February, late January. On behalf of the schools, the shift in the expense expectation is the thing that really paused the work. Just to say it right out loud. We had a very clear vision of what we thought we were working through, which was level service. And so that work was ongoing. And so now that there's going to be now that there's been a disruption in that process, we're going back and we're looking at every single line and identifying $200,000. In non-salary lines, we're looking at raising fees. You know, that's a lot of work that would have been, if that book had been printed, we would have had to go back and redo it if it was going to be ready by January. So we have some work to do that is dependent upon the decisions that are made over the next few weeks related to revenue and expectations for expenses.
So what is our schedule?
Right.
To get to a final decision? I think that's what Leroy was asking.
Wait,
Yeah.
right.
So what are we driving towards?
So obviously within a year where every single dollar counts, I think, we're patiently waiting that state aid final number. Obviously don't expect millions out of that, but hopefully something good. And that's, end of January, so January 28th. I think, we've talked about in this group, the approach on free cash and how we're gonna put that into the budget and then, or into the budget stabilization fund or to school reserves, and then the question of charging health insurance. And if that shift in cost is something that we can proceed with. So I think those are kind of the four big factors really that have to come together and there has to be consensus on in order us to have like, okay, here is the true final number that we need to work towards. I would view those as the four kind of big ticket items to reach final agreement on.
And which one's sort of like the critical path, which one comes in last that can't be pulled forward?
I don't see them as necessarily sequential in any particular order. I think, the health insurance piece, feedback from the schools, we shared that, we discussed that on Wednesday, so getting to an answer on that. And then, we can look at how to put the free cash to use and present that to the finance committee as kind of a first take on that game plan, or come back to this committee with that. Because that really is a big policy choice that needs to happen. So I didn't answer that question at all.
Yeah, so I guess like the question I have is, which of the four items can we not, which piece of information is coming in last, right? So that should kind of set like if you're like, these four things have to be answered, the one that's gonna come in last would be the one to say, the item by which we would say like, we can't expect a decision until at least this point at the earliest.
I think my perspective would be, let's get final state aid forecast done.
Yeah.
Because that is out of our control, where those other
Yeah.
decision points are within our control in terms of just town making decisions rather than relying on outside information. So I think setting a target of end of next week for the other, kind of having drafts of proposals for the other items would make sense, because we'll have that state aid number finalized. And this group isn't planning to meet until February 9th, whether it makes sense to bring that forward to February 2nd or have a finance committee in the meantime, in a joint school and select board finance committee meeting, kind of intervening time period. I would view, in terms of external information that we need, is just the state aid, otherwise it's internal decision making. And then there are questions obviously on the school side in terms of when they can provide feedback and takes on some of those other items.
So we can, we'll be meeting about the insurance parts. There are some members that I think will be easier to do that with than others. So we'll calculate that and interact with those folks who run those revolving accounts, which would be Milton Community Schools and our food service. We don't know if we can have both of those groups go out and pay for their own insurance, because our community schools is not financially viable at this time. That revolving account was dismantled a few years ago, so we have to get it back up online. But food service is definitely something that we're looking to do, and Katie and I will come up with a proposal of what that looks like. I think Amy and Nick have the names of the folks and how many folks and what kind of plans they have, so that data would be be able to go from us back to you in order to solidify that. We're continually open about the support for one-time funds. Want to continue to talk about what that means and how we can utilize that to our favor and be supported by the town in order to support that one-time funding mechanism, and also maybe rearranging how we use the bottom line of that account to support other parts of the budget. So we'll have that dialogue this week and next week as well. So
Jay's got his hand raised too. Oh,
in
sorry.
terms of action steps, I want to
Yeah.
make sure that you're aware that we are taking action steps.
Thank you.
Jay,
Oh, hello. Just a quick question to pull together two things that this committee has talked about. When I hear the description about the school finance, I wonder, does the school finance department have the software they need? We've asked that about the town. Do you have I mean, normally that would be a school committee question to ask, do you have the finance software you need? But then the information would benefit all of us. Open question?
Katie?
Sorry, do we have the financial software that we need? Was that the question?
Yeah.
From the school department side? I think it could be improved.
We met with folks that we were asked to meet with relative to the town schools software change, and I think that feedback was provided. I'm not sure where that went. I know Nick and Amy are working on that.
We're
That was a payroll.
focusing mainly first on HR and payroll
Payroll,
to see
yeah.
what can meet those needs. And then once we make that determination, then we'll look at the financial software, meaning more like accounts payable, general ledger, financial statement, budget preparation. But I think we can all agree that what we have is not great by any means, and something has to change. But we would certainly work together to find the solution that works for all of us.
Jay, are you asking that question to understand if we need to spend money on it next year, or to understand whether we can the school finance department can do the analysis needed to get to resolution on this year's budget?
I'm asking that question because some of the questions that came up 5 or 10 minutes ago seems like they should be easy to answer, but it seemed like they weren't easy to answer. And I'd rather light a candle than curse the darkness. So I wanted to try to be productive rather than say, you should answer these questions for us.
I think they're more tricky policy questions than they are tricky financial software questions in terms of what can funds support and other costs. I appreciate
I'm sorry, the questions I meant were like, why are you projecting a 5.2% increase next year? Give us the details on that. And the answer was,
okay, all right, got it.
the answer I heard was, we don't have those details. Now I'm paraphrasing, but rather than slam my fist on the table and say you should have those details, I'd rather
No, I
be
think what I heard Katie say was she has not shared those details with the school committee yet. And so we haven't shared them with this group yet. She definitely has those details. The paper that Brian's holding is a budget model from 2 months ago. So it's not a detailed level budget. That's not what its purpose was.
I would just reiterate that we have the details. We have the history, we have the details. We have the details for the projections. They have been shared at a higher level with the finance subcommittee and the school committee based off of feedback from last year. Last year, we shared a lot of information. And I think some of the feedback that we received was the information wasn't easily consumable and it was confusing. And so just in an effort to kind of streamline the reporting and the information, we tried to report it in a way that would be kind of easier to understand. But we certainly have the line level detail. Again, just we're really working towards finding out what that final number is before we finalize the documentation and then share that with the finance subcommittee and the school committee.
Winston's got his hand up.
So Nick, if you are saying that we expect the state aid numbers by next Tuesday or Wednesday, can we set that meeting for the select board, finance committee, and the school committee? For next week as well, so we can see where we are after their meeting tomorrow. I'm assuming it will be after our select board meeting on the 27th.
I'd want to talk.
Sure that we have that and the expectations that we'll be discussing everything together before we come back to this group on the 9th. Is that possible?
Yes, I think in terms of scheduling, we would likely probably want to look at the 30th as probably the earliest, and then I know your regular meetings are the Wednesday mornings, so whether it makes sense to kick it to February 4th and have that be kind of the deadline by which these items are due. If you're planning to meet that morning, if you and Megan can make that morning work as well, if that works for the group in terms of timeline.
February 4th?
Let me just, we could tentatively hold that. Mark's not on the call anymore. He's the chair of the finance committee, so I just want to, I can touch base with him. I'm sure it'll be fine.
And I just need to chime in that when you say meeting the school committee and the select board, you're leaving out an important group. I'm trying not to be too picky, but you are.
Do you want to come?
Well,
Is that,
what I think what Jay is saying is it a scheduled select board subcommittee, school subcommittee, warrant committee scheduled meeting? Or is it a select board and schools meeting where anybody can come? It's an
Yeah.
open meeting. I think he wants to participate, so I think it should be a select board subcommittee, school subcommittee, warrant committee.
so I think it's, not to be like too technical about it, but it seems like what I'm hearing is this is a school committee, finance committee meeting, which the select board members of the select board finance committee are invited. It seems to me that if the school committee wants to also invite the warrant committee, that's up to the school committee. Not to be super bureaucratic about it. But I think that's technically, if that's what we're doing, is Winston and I are attending the school committee, then it should be on the school committee to decide.
Continuing the super bureaucratic.
Yeah, but anybody's able to come, but it seems like warrant committee wants to participate too.
That's one alternative. So the other alternative is to say, rather than school subcommittee meeting, finance subcommittee meeting, we're going to schedule a joint school subcommittee, select board subcommittee, warrant committee meeting. The chairs will all agree that we're going to convene our groups at that time for a meeting, in which case, then everyone is a full participant.
Yep. So we can do it either way.
That wouldn't have to be at 8 AM or a Wednesday
No.
morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, could be anytime.
Just to clarify, what decision are we gonna make at the meeting?
I guess.
Well, it sounds like, although I thought, I'm a little confused, I have to confess, because I thought, and this goes back to the discussion that John raised. I thought we had this discussion where superintendent said he didn't feel that he had clear direction in the fall. He said he thought he had given clear direction in the fall, but now it sounds like we're still talking about, okay, so what's the final target? Which then means that maybe we haven't been clear about exactly what the target is. So I guess this is to say,
It's to
here's the
say
final
that
target.
that's what I think we're doing,
yeah,
but
that's what I think we're doing too.
this is more me sort of being Socratic, just to get
No, I think that's right. I think
If
as
we
things
have
stand
this
today,
meeting, can we make that final decision at that time?
where things stand today, we need to reduce the budget by $2.3 million. Previously, we were kicking around the $2.5 million. We take about the debt service and now our $2.3 million. We've talked about and articulated some of the impacts that might look like. Now we're trying to reduce that number. And I think we can get to that within the next 2 weeks because, we need feedback from the schools on the health insurance question. We need the state aid number. And then we need to come up with a proposal on the use of free cash that then puts that final number to bed. So I agree that it's kind of a bit murky. It's murky because we're taking a high number and trying to get to a different lower one. So my view is that gives us ample time to finalize a few of these items and be prepared to make recommendations around them.
So we will not be at like a final, I just want to make sure everybody's, this is what I was
So-
thinking, that we wouldn't necessarily be at a final number, but I want everybody's expectations to be managed around like, what are we coming to that meeting with and what's the decision that we're gonna make if we're bringing select board, school committee, warrant committee all together?
And I know we
Sorry,
have
Winston.
about 10 minutes left, so maybe we just need to lay out a calendar and a path of what's intended so we can determine what happens in these meetings. So I'm thinking about it right now. Nick, Amy, Katie, and John met last week to talk about potential changes to revolving accounts, state aid, and some chances to close that gap, right? So now the school committee is meeting this week, where I'm assuming John and Katie are presenting some of the results or thoughts from that meeting. And then there should be a follow-up after that, I'm assuming for us, if it's just the select board finance committee with Nick and Amy to say what the schools have thought. Is that okay? Am I okay at that point?
Yeah,
Well, then maybe we need to schedule that meeting, right? Where it's Megan, where it's the select board finance committee speaking with, discussing what the schools have said about the conversation that occurred last week.
yep, we'll get our ducks in a row, school committee's getting their ducks in a row.
And if
And then
yeah.
we'll have this meeting where we're
And
gonna
then-
get to a harder number.
Right, and then maybe that's when we come back for the joint meeting, as Jay's saying, the warrant committee would like to be included as well. I would hope that we would get there before the 4th. But if that's the earliest that we can, assuming that we could have our meeting either at the end of this week or early next week, understanding the school's response to the potential changes, I would hope that we can meet next week, but if not, then maybe that prepares us better for a conversation on the 4th, with where we see the gap and what we present as a solution with the warrant committee there.
Nick, I heard you say we shouldn't expect final state aid numbers until like the 30th.
It's
Something like that.
Yeah, so the 28th is when we expect the budget to come out. Sometimes the cherry sheets that articulate the exact net state aid by community lags by a day or two, so that was why I was building a little wiggle room in there. Sometimes it all comes out together, sometimes it just lags. And granted, if we could wake up and have no change, or we could have a couple $100,000 more, right? It's just
It's not gonna be like 10 million.
correct. Hopefully it doesn't go down.
That's why we ended up on the 4th. Winston, you were saying you were hoping we could figure this out sooner than the 4th, but I think we won't know state aid numbers until right before then.
Jay's got his hand raised.
I do. I need to defend the prerogative of the warrant committee here. We are the town's budget committee. And I think in recent years, budgets have been decided by the select board with input from the school committee and then presented to the warrant committee. And I want the warrant committee should have a more active role in setting the budget. I thought that's one of the things that this group was supposed to do. Now, it's maybe infeasible for all 15 members. All 15 members of the warrant committee are concerned about the budget. It's not feasible for all 15 of us to show up to a Wednesday morning meeting in the superintendent's office. Brian and I were elected by the warrant committee to be a representative of this group. So I'm trying to I'm trying to not be offended and to work towards something productive, but just saying it's an open meeting, anyone can walk in, you can walk in, I don't think is good enough. If the school finance committee and the select board finance committee are going to get together and make decisions, I don't think that's appropriate without representatives from the warrant committee there. I'm trying not to be offended. I'm trying to work towards something productive because we don't want the warrant committee to be an afterthought.
So I think I agree with Jay. So rather than one more time, so a meeting with the schools subcommittee, the select board subcommittee, and the warrant committee subcommittee, where that makes the warrant committee subcommittee members full participants, is
Yeah,
probably what I think we need.
That's what we're gonna go toward.
Right, but to be clear, that's not after the school committee makes its decisions, the select board makes its decisions, and then you have a meeting, as Jay is saying, where you say to the warrant committee, okay, so we just wanted to inform you of the decisions we made. They're saying, I think appropriately, we'd like to be a participant in that discussion so that we can reach a consensus together. Maybe we can, maybe we can't. Anyone?
I think we could bring it forward to next week, and then next week, the 30th, and target that morning, and I can work with folks and to coordinate availabilities, if that makes sense, just to move that date forward and to incorporate.
I think as long as we have all the information we need, then it's fine.
Well, there's a point, I think, where, and I'm concerned about what's the schedule for the warrant? At some point, we're pushing in, when do we need to have the warrant finalized?
First week of April, so it's April 7th
So
or
we have
something.
time. So,
But giving them the full months of February and March was always our intention, and I think that's, now we're starting to slip
exactly,
behind that.
exactly. And to be clear, once we're at a point where we've got enough information, so you said we're at 2.3. If we think there are gonna be swings where it could be 2 instead of 2.3, or 1.7 instead of 2.3, that's worth delaying for. But if it's gonna be 2.25 versus 2.3, then I think we say, hey, maybe there's some good news coming, but we can't wait any longer. Here's the target, here's the number. Let's agree on what this final budget looks like.
Agreed. And we've been making updates as we go, like we've already shared the principal and interest shift, so we're not working towards a $2.5 million reduction, now we're working to a $2.3 million reduction. So I think as information comes online, we can share that with.
I thought state aid was, you thought maybe $80,000 difference? Well,
we're pretty conservative right now, so in a normal budget cycle environment, I think we would expect that number to be very conservative, but with everything going on and already the administration seems to be planting the information that don't expect a lot out of the state budget this year, so that's where I would agree that it's probably not a huge factor, but it's just such an unknown, so.
yeah, so I
I think it's
ready to launch.
I think it's known. But we'll know Wednesday, Thursday.
I will, we'll set up the meetings, but I will say that for this, I disagree that the select board shouldn't be able to sit with the school finance committee and complete the conversation that we started. It's not about decisions being made or different groups being cut out. Right? This was a request that we had from the school committees. We started that conversation. I think asking for us to be able to sit down and finish it and say, okay, this is where we've come to in our kind of negotiation process, and then bringing all the other groups in. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I will concede to the wisdom of the group, especially since we assembled this group for communication and collaboration. But I would hope that whether now or in the future, that it is not an issue if the select board wants to sit down with any specific committee or any two committees would like to sit and have a discussion.
And I think, Winston, the law is clear on that. The Strong Town Administrator legislation that we passed says that it's the town administrator that presents the budget to the select board and to the warrant committee. So it's clear who the decision makers are. So I don't think there's any lack of clarity about that. But as you said, I think the thought behind, one of the thoughts behind this committee was to increase both collaboration and communication. So I think those are still worthy objectives.
And necessary objectives. I mean, this is an incredibly tight budget year. And we need to avoid the challenges with collaboration and communication that we've had over the past couple of years. I think everyone's doing a great job at keeping this very civilized. And I feel like this process, though it is really hard and like mind numbing at times because we keep having these meetings, I do think it's beneficial for the elected and appointed members, and I think it's beneficial for the public who are watching these conversations unfold.
Absolutely.
So Jay, I hope we hear you. We mean no offense by it, and thank you for being honest with us. We want to continue to work with the warrant committee and yourself.
Thank you. And I think, when the select board and the school committee meet, that's doing the same thing that was done the previous 2 years. I would just like it to be done a little bit differently. Thank you.
Okay, so it looks like we're coming up at the top of the hour, if we haven't already. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Let me just say one thing.
Yep.
Rob Milt had some ideas about discussion analysis of health insurance and group insurance commission, whether that might be a viable idea going forward. So we promised him some time on that. Nathan, some ideas about the process, kind of integrating the discussion of the projections and how we're going about that with what we're doing right now. So we need to hear from him on that. So just
We'll
things
get
that we
those
promised
two.
people we would get to at some point very soon.
Yeah,
So hopefully next meeting they'll both have some airtime.
I also think it's okay to focus our attention on locking the budget.
Right.
Rob's idea, my idea, they aren't gonna help us this year. So, but thank you, Laura.
Making sure
yes.
everyone's ideas are given due consideration.
Your time.
Yeah.
So the next meeting for this group is when?
This group, the Budget Coordination Committee we have a hold for February 9th at 8 a.m. That's that Monday.
And we'll connect on what meetings we think need to take place for the next 3 weeks.
I'll coordinate, or I'll send out an email to yourself and Charlie. I'll have it at the end of time.
Now I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
All right.